If you are tired of takeout and want to cook a delicious healthy meal at home without an overcomplicated recipe, this is the video for you. This jerk chicken bowl is bold, balanced, and doable in a regular real kitchen. We're getting deep Caribbean flavors by searing marinated chicken in a cast iron pan, deglazing it with a wonderful sauce, and baking everything together until it's delicious, sticky, and perfect. Then we're finishing it as a full bowl with coconut rice and a bright, fresh cabbage slaw. For the full ingredient list, check the description box below, but enough talking. Let's get cooking. I know you're here for the chicken, but we're gonna start with one of the sides and we're gonna make this a Jamaican inspired slaw. Jamaicans cook cabbage down and the slaw is cooked. This is gonna be a raw version to cut down on time, but the flavors are gonna be really similar. Let me show you how I make the dressing for this slaw. So we're gonna start out with a couple of tablespoons of some extra virgin olive oil. To that, we're gonna add a couple of tablespoons of this apple cider vinegar. So now I'm gonna add the juice of one lime. Before I juice it, I'm gonna give it a little bit of a roll just so we can loosen up a lot of the juice that's in here. This dish is not a traditional Jamaican coleslaw, so all of my Jamaicans watching, please do not kill me. I know that you usually cook your cabbages, but here I wanted to make something that's fast, it's weeknight accessible, and it really goes with the dish. By rolling that lime before, we really get a lot more juice out of these limes. They squeeze way easier. And now to that, for some sweetness, we're gonna add a little honey. You can use sugar for this, but I find that my go-to sweetener for most stuff, unless I'm cooking it, is gonna be some honey. So now we're gonna add a little salt and a little fresh ground black pepper. So now let me show you an ingredient that I think really rounds out this slaw, and it is a ingredient that Jamaicans generally cook the cabbage with. So this is some lemon thyme. This is an unbelievably fresh herb, and usually I would never use this raw in a finished dish, but I put it in there with the hopes that it would really give like this nice like floral element to the dish, and it totally worked. This stuff is fresh out of my garden. If you don't have the lemon thyme, you can just use the regular stuff, but what I'm gonna do is to remove the leaves, I'm gonna use my 3 fingers just like the parsley, and I'll pull all the way down to make sure we don't get any of the woody stems. And I'm not gonna add too much of it. When you're using fresh thyme in a raw dish, it needs to be done really delicately. We're not gonna add much more than that. This is plenty. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna give it a nice little chop, and I'm gonna make sure that all the leaves are nice and fine when we put it in there. And you can use the dried stuff, and the dried stuff will go in there just fine. It'll give it a nice flavor, but I have this in my garden and I like to use it whenever I can. I find that the lemon thyme is just the lemon thyme. I always say thyme. I never know how to say it because the H is in there, and every time I think about the word, I want to say thyme, but it's really thyme. Does anybody else struggle with that? So now I'll take the fresh thyme and I'll put it right inside of that dressing. The acid from the vinegar and the lime juice will really bloom the flavors out of there and really mellow it out. So that's why I like to do this step first and not wait until the end, because sometimes when it's in there too fresh, too quick, it's a little strong. So now I'll give this a little whisk. There's not much in here to whisk. I'm just making sure that the honey has mixed with the acids that we put in here and that oil and the rest of the stuff in there, the salt, that'll dissolve really, real fast. So now that we made the dressing, let's set this aside and make the rest of the slaw. So now the big time saver on a weekday is getting this bagged slaw. So here I got some green cabbage and some carrots that are already shredded. And here I got the red cabbage. I really don't mind this move, especially if the stuff is fresh and good to go. This saves you a lot of time, and these are not much more pricey than buying the whole cabbage. And generally when I'm making a slaw, I'm only using part of the cabbage. So if I want this plus no waste, these are great options that are really gonna save you some time. Pardon the pun, time. So here we're gonna dump the cabbage just right inside of the bowl. And if you want to shred your cabbage and shred your carrots, go right ahead. I do that too sometimes, but here I want to show you some of the shortcuts that I like to use on a weeknight. So I'm just going to put about half of this red onion in there. I'm not going to take the mandolin out. I'm going to do this all with a knife. So now, just like I would with the mandolin, I'm going to cut this onion as thinly as possible. We want this to almost blend in right with the cabbage. And when onions cut thick, it like eats a little sharply. But when it's cut really thin, I think the flavors are a little bit more mellowed out. Remember, when you get all the way to the end, turn the onion the other way. It's way easier to grip this way, and the knife has leverage to cut down without tilting the onion, and you're able to make all these really fine cuts all the way down to the end. Next up, we're gonna put more onions. Here we got some green onions or some scallions, whatever you wanna call them. So I'll clip off the tops off these. So now we'll cut our scallions. Like I like to show in a lot of my videos, I like to flatten out the scallions and then cut diagonal across them. When you flatten the scallions out, you can chop them a little bit more finely. This is gonna go right inside of our bowl. A normal ingredient in Jamaican cuisine is the Scotch bonnet pepper. I'm staying away from anything that's really spicy. My digestive system can really just not handle eating that raw habanero Scotch bonnet pepper. So here I'm gonna put in a red bell pepper. It's gonna give a good pepper flavor, but no heat. There's many ways to clean a pepper. One of the ways that's really easy is cut down onto the pepper. And then as you cut around, just roll the pepper. And as you're rolling the pepper, you're removing the whole outside of the pepper all the way to the other side. I removed the whole flesh. Here we have this still intact, and we have a no waste policy, so we're actually gonna use this bottom. We'll take that right off. That is a nice, easy way to clean a pepper with minimal waste and minimal knife strokes. So now let's cut the pepper nice and finely. Let's start off with the bottom, and I'm just gonna use a really short rocker chopper and cut everything very finely and throw it right inside of the bowl. When handling the pepper, I just like to cut it into sections, and then I'll handle each section individually. Pepper you can cut both ways, so you could put the shiny side up or you could put the rough side up. I like to put the rough side up, and if I'm doing fine cuts, I can either pull my knife downward. You can see how nice and fine you can get that, and you can also rocker chopper, so you got options with a pepper. And as you're getting closer to the end, just make sure you're taking care of your fingertips and don't get those caught in there. And so we're gonna cut that pepper up nice and finely, little matchstick style, and then we're gonna throw that right inside of our slaw. So now that we cut up the scallions, the peppers, and the red onions, got our cabbage and our carrots in there. Now we're gonna take our dressing and we're gonna pour that right on top and give this a mix. So I'll just keep tossing it until everything is nice and well coated and the slaw looks nice and uniform. And I love like the brightness and the freshness of this. It just smells like light, and it's perfect with a nice like saucy chicken because it's gonna cut through a lot of the spice flavor that we're gonna put on top of that chicken. And we're doing this first because this needs time for the thyme to release its flavor into the slaw and for all these flavors to really like meld. If you can eat this fast, but it's way better after it sits for an hour. I think, you know, a couple hours is probably best, and I think overnight is probably too long. Slaw, because of the salt that you're putting in there, it's gonna pull out a lot of the moisture. If you do this overnight, it could get a little watery by the morning, but in a couple hours, it's probably still pretty good. It'll be nice and cool in the refrigerator, and the flavors will have enough time to really blossom and really take on like full partnership with everything else that's in here. Once I think I've mixed this enough, I'm gonna let this sit in the fridge. Let's get onto that chicken. You can make this recipe with a lot of things. Here we're going boneless, skinless chicken thighs. So here I got the family pack, the big monster. And how many pounds is this? This is a 4.27 pounds. So I got 4.25 pounds. This looks like a lot of chicken. We'll eat this in just a day or two because a recipe like this, the leftovers are even better the next day. So now I'll put the chicken thighs into this hotel pan, and as I do that, I like to inspect each one just in case there's like any like bone fragments. You never know what happens with any chicken that you're using, because you want to make sure that whatever enters the final dish isn't going to be any like bone fragments, feathers, all kinds of stuff. Remember, this thing once was a full chicken. Don't take for granted that it's totally clean and it's fine to use. And when you handle your food, you get to see it rather than just dump it inside the container. We're going to start off with a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. It's just going to drizzle along the top. This is going to help the spices bind to the outside of the chicken, and it's also going to help let the spices release their flavor onto the chicken. There's just not enough moisture, and the oil really helps all those dried spices that we're going to put on here do that. So we're going to start off with some of my base seasoning. This is a blend of garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. I'm actually in the process of producing some base seasoning for you all to buy. It's easily made. I've made videos on how I make it, but I think I'm going to start making this just so I can share my go-to spice blend that I put on almost everything with you. So let's put on a couple of teaspoons of that on top of here. Really saves a lot of time and is the base of the flavor. Next up is going to be some ground allspice. This is going to lend the most Jamaican flavor to this Jamaican jerk chicken. You know, we're avoiding the hot spice in this recipe by bringing out the Scotch bonnets or habaneros, but this unbelievable allspice is going to lend really nice Caribbean flavors. And I always thought allspice was a blend of spices. It sounded like it, and it kind of smells like it has like cinnamon and nutmeg in it. But I actually found out it's actually a berry all by itself. It's called an allspice berry, and that's what this is. It's just one thing that's ground up, and it's not a spice blend. So I'm going to add about a teaspoon of that in there. And now we're not making this on the grill, so we're gonna add some smoked paprika. That's gonna help bring out a really nice smoky flavor that's gonna mimic a lot of the flavors that you would get from an open fire. Here we see some thyme again, but this time we're gonna use the dried stuff. The dried stuff has a little bit of a different flavor than fresh, although the flavors are really similar. And I find that using the fresh stuff in a rub like this can really help bring out the flavors a little bit more than the fresh stuff. Now we're gonna add a little bit of some ground cinnamon. I love using cinnamon inside savory dishes, so anytime I have an opportunity to do it, I love it. It just smells so good and it tastes so good in sweet dishes and in savory dishes. We're not gonna leave the heat out completely, but if you want to, I would eliminate in this ingredient. So we're gonna add a little bit of some ground cayenne pepper. This is gonna add just a little bit of heat that this dish needs without going overboard. And I don't need to be handling habanero peppers if I don't need to. So we're just gonna put just a 1/4 teaspoon inside there. You can eliminate this if you wanna go completely spice free. And I don't really think it changes the flavor too much, but I just like just a little bit. So now I'm just gonna drizzle a little olive oil over the top of the dried spices just to loosen them up a little bit. Now I'm going to go in there with my hands and just give it a nice mix until everything is all well coated. And you can mix the spice blend up all together by itself and then add it to the chicken. I find that that sometimes is like an unnecessary step, and you can just give this a little extra of a mix and everything will just blend just fine. If you were going to make a larger batch, that's probably a different story because it'll be way harder to mix. But a little home batch like this, you throw it right on top of the chicken, it's fine. And if you like everything all spread out and you want to make sure that it's well mixed before it even touches the chicken, go ahead and do that. But again, this dish, we're going to chop it all up anyway. So I don't think it's very important that you pre-mix the spices. You can just throw them right on top. So now that our chicken is spiced up, I'm going to put this aside. We're going to make the glaze that's going to go with this chicken. We're going to start off with a little low sodium soy sauce. I'm going to put in about 1/3 cup. Now back again with the honey, we're gonna put a little bit of this in there, a couple tablespoons. Now we're gonna put some more lime juice in here. You know, the flavor of this on the chicken and the flavor of this in the slaw are gonna be completely different, and at the same time, they're gonna be really complementary to each other. Now we're also going to add some apple cider vinegar, another ingredient that we saw inside the dressing for the slaw. Now we're going to put an ingredient that's probably not typical, but I find that works well inside the glaze. We're going to put a couple of tablespoons of this ketchup. The same spice that we put on the chicken, we're going to put inside of this glaze. Just going to sprinkle a little bit of that in there. Now we're going to add 2 fresh ingredients, a little fresh ginger and some garlic. So now with our microplane right over the bowl, first we're gonna shred in the garlic. We're gonna keep the root tip intact, and I'm just gonna rub it on the microplane and use the little root end as my handle. And we get all the way down to the end. We've gone far enough, and we can discard that. And now with the ginger, always make sure that when you're grating ginger, you're always grating against the fibers. Here you can see how the fibers run lengthwise on the ginger. So I want to make sure I do it this way, because if I do it this way, it's going to get really stringy. So I'll do the same thing here with the ginger. And I think I cut off way more than I'm going to use. And you can see that when I'm doing it this way, the fibers kind of shred into it. If I do it this way, see how like the fibers get all stringy on there? That wouldn't happen if I go this way. Okay, that's about enough. And now we'll clean the bottom of the microplane right into our glaze. So now we'll whisk this all together. You know, we got some solid ingredients in here. We got the ketchup, the honey, the spices. It's all got to blend together. So our glaze is done. Our chicken is seasoned and it's been sitting for a while. All the flavors have come out. Let's head over to the stove and sear our chicken, get the glaze on top of the chicken and get this in the oven. We gotta eat dinner. So I've got my oven preheated to 375 degrees and I got this cast iron hot over like a medium high heat. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil to the pan. And now I'm gonna start searing these chicken thighs. When they go in, they should sizzle. So I'm gonna brown these for about 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Then I'm gonna take these and put these inside of a baking dish. One of the things with cooking with cast iron develops cold spots. It's got its areas that are hot, its areas that are cold. Look at the color on this chicken, look at the color on this one. This one's really nice and dark and colorful. This one's way less. I'm gonna put this one in the middle, let that brown on the bottom, and I'm gonna give this a chance to get a little bit more brown on the top. So now that we've got good color on both sides of this chicken, we're gonna take each one of these pieces and we're gonna move it into our baking dish. These chicken thighs really should just be able to cook inside the fat that's already in here. Now we'll do that same browning step for the second batch. Perfect. See, this one's a little pale, so we're going to do the flip with this one and get that a little bit more color first before we flip it. How's this one looking? Not bad. So now that these are brown on both sides, I'll put these inside of our baking dish. Also turn the heat off from the pan. Now, as the pan is cooling down, I'm going to reclaim a lot of the flavors. We're going to take that glaze that we made and we're going to pour it inside the hot cast iron pan. The glaze is going to reduce just a tiny little bit from the residual heat. It's also going to give us an opportunity to reclaim all the little burnt bits on the bottom here, and that's excellent flavor that we want to get into that final dish. That's what makes like real awesome home cooking. So we'll give that just a little scrape, clean the bottom of this pan. So now I'm going to take this glaze and I'm going to pour it right over the top of the chicken, making sure that I'm getting every little bit out of there. So now uncovered, we're gonna put this in our 375 degree oven for about 18 to like 22 minutes. I'm probably just gonna go like a nice even 20, which is right in the middle. So while the chicken's cooking, we only gotta do one more thing. We're gonna make our coconut rice. And this is a lighter weekday version. It's a little lighter on calories, not full blast coconut rice, but like weekday coconut rice. So we're gonna start off with some jasmine rice. I'm gonna skip the washing step. If you ever watched my should you wash your rice video, I kind of showed in that video, like it's kind of like not a really essential step. And I know I'm gonna piss some people off when I say that, but I haven't not been washing the rice and I really haven't seen much of a difference in the finished product. But maybe you want to wash your rice and that's something that you do, but I'm going to skip that step for today. I'm just trying to get dinner on the table. So we're going to put a cup of that dry jasmine rice right inside the pot. So now for a liquid in this dish, we're going to put some coconut milk. And here I got the light version, way lighter on the calories than the full blast coconut milk. And here is some low sodium chicken broth. It's going to add some really amazing flavors to this rice to pair up with this super flavorful dish. So we'll put about 2/3 of a cup of each one. And I find with rice, you don't got to be like crazy exact. You could be a little looser. And to get the coconut milk out of the can, you use one of these can openers. I don't even know what these are called, like puncture can openers. I remember these from when I was a kid. You really don't see them too much these days. And we'll put another 2/3 of a cup of this light coconut milk. So we've seen a lime in every single component of this dish. So why are we gonna leave it out of the coconut rice? So again, I'm gonna give that a little bit of a squeeze. The acid is really gonna bring out the flavors of the coconut milk. And just a pinch of salt. So now I'm gonna give this a little mix. We're gonna bring it over to the stove. We're gonna bring it up to a low boil, and then we're gonna simmer it on low for about 15 minutes until that rice is cooked, and let it sit for another 5 off the heat to let the rice continue to steam and fluff up really nicely. So this chicken has been in the oven for about 20 minutes. You can see how delicious everything looks. It smells absolutely fantastic. Let's let this cool down a little bit. I'm gonna chop it and then I'm just gonna toss it inside the sauce. So we're gonna make sure that we're using all of the sauce. We're not just gonna eat the chicken and just have like a baking dish of sauce after. So I like to take all the chicken out first, and you can see that it's cool enough that I can handle it with my hands and I'm not getting burnt. I'll take all the chicken out and just leave the juice inside there. We can also use our tongs if everything's a little too hot. And before I cut up this chicken, look how delicious and flavorful this chicken looks. And you can see by the way it jiggles that it's not dry, but if I give it a little bit of a squish, you can see how it comes apart just a little bit, but it doesn't shred. That means it's cooked. It's cooked well, but it's not overcooked. Now, the chicken thigh grains run this way, so I want to cut against the grain. So I'll just put it like on a little bit of an angle, and then I'll just give it a rough chop going all the way through like I work at Chipotle. I'll do a couple before I move it into the sauce. And actually, if I organize it well, I think I might be able to do all the chicken and just dump the whole board right inside the sauce. I guess I'm just getting better at organizing myself for this dish. That's one of the great parts about cooking things multiple times. Everybody does like a recipe like one time and then it's like done and over with. Like make stuff multiple times and you never know like what you will get better at as you are doing it. The efficiency of making a recipe is really what makes it like magic that you can just like spin around the kitchen. You're not thinking too much. You already have most of the stuff on hand. You made the dish before, you know all the little intricacies. And that gets dinner faster on the table with way less effort. Oh, this chicken smells good and it is juicy. If anybody at Chipotle is watching this and you work there, let me know how I did. Can I hang with you guys? So now that our chicken is nice and chopped, we're gonna take that, we're gonna throw it right back into that sauce. Let me get off a little bit. And then I'm just gonna dump the rest right in. So now I'm gonna take this wonderful chicken and toss it inside this wonderful sauce. And as I toss it, the chicken, because it's cut up now, will now like soak up the sauce and it'll cling a little bit better than when the chicken thighs are all whole. But this is the best of both worlds because it's spiced, it's saucy, and it's absolutely delicious. So now we're gonna take some thinly sliced scallion greens. We're gonna sprinkle that right over the top, give this a nice pop of color. And now look how amazing this chicken looks. It was super easy, very fast, super flavorful. Okay, now let's take a look at our rice. I love the smell of coconut. It smells so good. We'll get out a fork and we'll give it just a little bit of a fluff. But look how nice this rice looks. We didn't get any bubbles. I don't get any sticking. We didn't wash the rice. And now we'll take that other half of the lime and we'll zest right into that coconut rice. This just gives it a really nice, fresh flavor. Ooh. These are the little things that really make dishes pop. And so when you're like, oh my God, that is so good. What's the difference? Little zest, fresh lime juice. That's it. Mix that right in there. This smells so good. So now that we have all of our components done, let's plate. So let's get a little bit of this coconut rice. Now look how fluffy and delicious this rice looks. It smells so good. Way better than just regular rice for this dish. And now some of that fresh slaw. And last but not least, some of this delicious chicken. I like to give it a nice toss into the sauce before we plate. And you can always give it a little tilt on a little extra sauce on top. And if you really wanted to go the extra mile and make it look extra fancy, a little sprinkle of some more scallion greens on top. And now look how amazing this home-cooked Jamaican jerk chicken bowl looks. One thing I like to do is take the other half of the lime and squeeze that lime juice right on top of there, a little fresh lime juice. The fourth time we're seeing lime in this recipe. It's in every single component and we squeeze a little bit on top. It's really gonna bring out the ultimate flavors in this dish. So let's see if we can get a little everything on one bite. The coconut rice, our Jamaican inspired slaw, The chicken. Oh, we definitely got to get a little bit more chicken on there for the first bite. This is gonna be an epic bite. There are so many layers of flavors in this dish. The thyme that comes out from that little bit that we put inside with that fresh slaw, so good. The coconut rice, all the spices that we put on top of this chicken. This dish is so good and so balanced. The lightness and the brightness of the slaw, the flavorfulness of the coconut rice, and the spice that all comes from the chicken is all super like balanced out. This tastes like a complete dish, and it was so low effort. This chicken, this is so good, and it's gonna taste even better tomorrow once it sits in the fridge and you warm it up again. Oh man, this is so good. Not only does that chicken soak up the sauce, the rice is gonna get everything that came off of that chicken. This is so fantastic, so fresh, and relatively little effort for such an amazing dish like this. I'm gonna eat the rest of this Jamaican jerk chicken bowl. If this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, get that notification bell on so you can find out when I drop new recipe videos. Hit like, drop me a comment, and if you like similar recipes like this, check out my lemon garlic chicken. That's a really awesome recipe. It's kind of a similar format. We brown the chicken, we throw some sauce on it, we throw it in the oven. You're gonna absolutely love it. Thanks, and I'll see you on another video.